Well, here we are, kayaking on a flooded Laguna de Santa Rosa. It's a beautiful day in January. We've had a couple of major storms this winter. The most recent brought maybe 2 inches and a couple of extra feet of water into the Laguna. Remember this location from our visit in the fall. We enjoyed the shade of this oak tree as we sat on the grassy bank. Now we're able to paddle through its canopy and enjoy the architecture of the leafless tree. The flood also allows for another very exciting winter feature. We have the migration of salmonid fish species. So that's salmon, we have chinook and coho, and the steelhead trout that are entering the Russian River. And the needs of salmon are fairly complex. They need to have overhanging banks and woody debris in the stream, vegetation on the stream side to shade the water, and just the right size gravels in the bed to allow for eggs to get enough oxygen circulating around them. These requirements are not met in today's creeks, and so as a result, the salmonid populations have declined to the point where they're now federally protected by the Endangered Species Act. Ultimately, the water you see here in the flooded Laguna de Santa Rosa today is part of a finite and precious supply. The water on the planet is the only water that's ever been here. It's the only water we'll ever have. So each of us play a vital role in keeping our watersheds clean. Spend some time at a rookery in the springtime, you can spy on all the intimate interactions in the life of an egret or a heron. So it starts at the beginning of the season when the birds go through very elaborate courtship rituals to establish their intention to create a nest and go through the very energetic process of raising young. And then as the season progresses, we'll see that they'll take turns incubating the eggs. And you can watch one bird come to relieve the other. During a feeding event, an adult will return with food. The adult lands in the nest, and the chicks stand up and begin to clamor for food. They tap their bill against the bill of the parent, and eventually the parent regurgitates the food. The chicks, when they're young, feed directly out of the bottom of the nest, but as they grow older, they don't wait for the food to hit the ground. They'll literally reach into the mouth and throat of the adult and feed. Behind me is a good example of a vernal pool. Vernal pools are a very special kind of wetland. They occur in very few places in the world because there's very certain conditions that are required for them to exist. The first is a Mediterranean climate. That means a wet, dry year where all of your rainfall comes during the winter, and then the summertime is dry and the pools remain empty. The second condition is a depression, or a place where water can pond. Sometimes this appears as a pool, it looks round. Other times it might be linear, where it looks like a small creek or what we call a swale. The third condition is that water has to remain trapped at the surface. So normally water would trickle down through the nooks and crannies between grains of soil. But in the case of the vernal pool, we have a hard or impervious layer that's near the surface that traps water and keeps it ponded during the winter months. These cheerful yellow flowers are Burke's goldfields. That's Leucaena burkii in Latin. And they're one of the flowers in the Santa Rosa Plain and in the Laguna de Santa Rosa that receive federal and state protection under the Endangered Species Act. Like all wetlands in California, vernal pools have been lost over the last century to agriculture and development. Because a plant like this can only live in a vernal pool, when vernal pool habitat is lost, that species becomes in danger of extinction. And so we have a handful of protected species in the Laguna de Santa Rosa. Our plants, the Sebastopol meadowfoam, Burke's goldfield, Sonoma sunshine, and many-flowered Navarretia, in addition to one animal, the California tiger salamander. The Laguna de Santa Rosa is rich in biodiversity, so many species of plants and animals, and the unique species we find in vernal pools certainly add to that richness. Currently, we recognize that we're in a biodiversity crisis, that we're losing species at an alarming rate. And why should we care about the extinction of species? First, we can argue there's an aesthetic value to a beautiful flower like Sebastopol meadowfoam that I would miss every spring if it weren't here. Secondly, there's a moral argument that we could make. Do human beings have the right to drive species to extinction? The third, and I think most compelling, are the services that a rich, complex web of interacting species provide for us. These are often referred to as ecosystem services. And they're things like cleaning the air, cleaning the water, protecting our coastal zones from flooding, amelioration of the weather, building our soils, recycling nutrients, pollinating our crops, and on and on. Lastly, I'll share with you an anecdote attributed to Paul Ehrlich. He said, imagine you were sitting on a plane waiting for it to take off. You look out the window and you see a mechanic's out there removing a bolt from the wing. Oh, well, you think, there's plenty of bolts holding the wing on. And then you look and see that he's removing another, and then another. At what point do you not feel that the plane is safe to take off? And that's like losing species. If one species is lost, it may not make any difference. But ultimately, it signals to us that the ecosystem is damaged. And as the ecosystem collapses, human beings become the endangered species. I've really enjoyed sharing the Laguna de Santa Rosa with you, and I hope it inspires you to get involved in one of the many activities going on in the Laguna, be it education or restoration or just enjoying the beauty and natural history that we find here.